Oh, interesting. And we having here different themes. That's data from the edge, also data in motion and data at rest. What we today looking mainly is the data at rest part and the analytics to get used to this, and we do by maybe following up sessions go into more of this different areas as the cloud and also different services which sit on top of the global data management. So starting from our product web page, we go here, and it's really that we exploring today these two sides of the sandbox. So you directly find this if you go to hortonworks.com/product/ and then you see our two parts. Sandbox, as you know, we are having all of our software is open sourced, so you can get all the software from this page, and you can download it to your. It's not only the sandbox. What is a self-contained environment for demos and then all this hands-on stuff? We have also the full software available here on the other side where you can download is also. So starting from the sandbox. Just loading here. We're having different areas where you can utilize it or deploy the sandbox. It's on a classical virtual machine, so in a VMware as a virtual box or as a VMware environment. And also many times we use it on Docker environments where you can kick off the Docker container, and then the Docker system will pull down the containers from the repository down to your workstations. And very convenient is to use this. As I said, we today looking on this environment here. I also want to mention here our other products is data flows, as this is more interesting how we get the data on the database, on the data lake. So you can download this from the different, it's a size, usually if you have a full machine here, for example, that takes roughly 16 gigs, and you can have to have enough space. So more convenient, as I said, is just the installation of the Docker. What is basically a small script that you can run, or have, I think it's 3 or 4 scripts what you run, and then they deploy all the environments on your side.
Let's maybe share your thoughts and experiences on running the sandbox environment in the cloud versus on your local machine. I personally I am running on Windows, and I had difficulties to get the environment up and running on my local machine. So what are your thoughts? How should users who are new to Hortonworks data platform, which option should they pick?
So it's always the most limitation factor is the CPU and memory parts, what we require to run the sandbox. So if you have enough space on your memory and computation available in your sandbox on your laptop, that is good. Usually it's some limitation in that. So let's face it, it's we do not have this big. All of us do not have this big laptops, but a good alternative is definitely that you can go to a web or hosting provider in the cloud, and you spin up an, for say, basic CentOS or a basic Windows machine, and from that you can continue. This Windows machine then should be reasonable. Reasonable for me is minimum 4 to 6 or 8 CPUs and around 16 plus 20 gigs of RAM. So the disk is not really the only interesting part on the disk side is it can some of the cloud providers offering today SSDs as faster I/O medium, and that makes it also very convenient. So to answer your question, I personally go usually into the cloud and spin up a machine, and from that I install this on this cloud machine. And it is, for example, for today's demo, I used a machine in Azure, and that's my sandbox that I deployed here, and I can monitoring this nicely, and I have all the security and firewall settings then set up properly. So that's quite easy.
Yeah, let's maybe talk about costs for a minute. We know that Hortonworks, the sandbox, comes free of any charge, but when you're utilizing Microsoft Azure, resources, so that comes with a price tag. So what is your experience, Friedel? What would it cost someone exploring the Sandbox environment using in conjunction with Microsoft Azure? What are the costs that
yeah, a good machine is not, it's around 50 cents to 50 cent euro up to $1. That's what you pay per hour for such a Sandbox environment, nothing more. It is really also limited to the number of machines what we have. We do not spin up, the Sandbox is just one machine. And while other scenarios, when we go into cluster deployments, we just have a couple of machines, and 10 to 20 is not uncommon in this scenario. And if you have something in the range of 20 machines, this then costs really more than just €1 per hour. So that's very, I would say that the cloud offers really good options to deploy sandboxes. And yes, it's a good environment where you can spin up such a sandbox. Okay.
Super.
So let me go back. After downloading the software, it is our next part is that we want to go into this tutorial. I want to show the tutorials. So after you have found a good machine and downloaded the software, the first spin up and startup of all the services is part of the startup procedures of the Sandbox. You will usually see a system what is coming up with this kind of screen. And just check it here. This is a welcome screen. And from that, you can have you have two options. One of them is go to the dashboard. I will do this. Or the other side is also that you provide some quick links to the different services of that. In example, here is also a web shell client, and you can log in to this web machine on Azure, for example. Here, I will do it and I show them on this for you. And here we are. Bash, say, for example, make some htop. So now we are from the web browser sitting on the machine. This is also part of the Sandbox, as it has in the backend also and routing. So it gives you also this kind of easy access to your environment. I don't stop it. And that's it. Okay, 1 second. So back to the welcome screen. So I go now back to the other side, and here is the machine, and we directly go into the dashboard of Ambari. Ambari is our main tool what we having in Hortonworks HDP. It manages all the different services. And you see already here on the left side how many services are even turned on by default in the Sandbox environment. So it is a full functional environment with lots of services. In particular, here just mentioning HDFS, Yarn is resource managing, and the MapReduce, very classical tools, TAS, Hive. Today we go more into the Hive section. So most of the work is Hive. HBase is NoSQL, Pig is our scripting, Scoop for database, all the different tools, and some highlight, it's also including Spark inside of the Sandbox. What it allows you to run Spark code also and do in-memory processing. Another part of our today's session will be Zeppelin Notebooks, where we just go into and have some reportings on that. So from that, I wanted to show you also here some of the different users. It's Ambari is sitting has a fully user concept. So your understanding user concept is highly important, because it is a cluster environment which allows you that many different users accessing and not only one. So in this case, we're having one user that's Maria development with and has a certain set of rules. And one of the rules is that this user can act as an Ambari administrator, but also is able to go to the HDFS and Hive services. So think a good time is we go through these different services, just already mentioned here, that in Ambari gives you a lot of different services, and for example, the SQL. And it also controls the configurations of all this stuff. So if you have to do something special, you do it usually in Ambari. In example here, if you want to turn on interactive query, then you can just do it simply by enabling a button here. So that's good. And I think interesting also here, I like to mention is also the resource managing. So usually it is for you as a developer not too much interesting, but it gives you all the freedom to use resources inside of such a cluster. And you define the resourcing usually by queues, and from these queues you get the resources assigned to your job. And this is what is under the hood of the sandbox, what allows you then to have consume different resources as these different services from the cluster with Yarn. Next tab here is Sandbox. Today, in the Sandbox environment, we have just one machine. Gives you a quite good overview about the different configuration parameters, and also about the disk usage, and then also alerts are also very interesting. If you have different services running into a red flag, you will be noticed and see it directly. Another important part is Hortonworks does all the work for you to combine and bundle the different open source product in one stack, in one distribution, and it does all the testing and the versioning behind that. And you see here all the different software components which sitting inside of a sandbox and the different versions. And you see already it's really a long stack of things. And to make this all working together, it's a big piece of our engagements here and we bring to the community. So I think that's already enough from the administration of the cluster, and we now want to go more into the areas of how we use it. And obviously one thing is that we want to use and load files to this. And how to do this? It's first starting point is we go here to this the upper right side into the files view, and this gives you an entry point or a visibility of all data what's in the cluster. So it's organized on HDFS. HDFS is pretty much the same as a directory, but it's distributed. It goes across nodes. It goes across hundreds of nodes and petabytes of scale. So it's basically unlimited where you can store and access the data. And here we have different directories here. And for example, here there's a user directory and a different site. So I just drill down here. That is my user Maria. You see is here. And I have here already a couple of directories, and I can create a new folder and a sample, for example, new folder. Just online, will add this, and that's it. So I have now created a folder inside of the cluster of Maria apps. And so that's one part. And I can also upload data here. So in our scenario, I want just to upload, and here's the button what you can use for uploading the data. And now I load the data from my workstation into the Hadoop cluster. So in our scenario, it's my local Mac, but I upload the different data here inside my workstation to the Hadoop. So that's one upload. You see how fast it was. It's just limitation about the network connection. Upload another one is also as easy. Just pick here one next and simply upload it. So what I have now done is I picked a file from my local directory on the desktop, and I saved it over the internet into the Azure cloud and into the Sandbox. So we're having now these two different directories, or we have one directory and the two different files here. We can also click on it, and here's you see you can remove it, you can copy it, and do this kind of work for this. Also permissions. We can set, for example, read and write and execute permissions on this. So again here, and you see here, you directly get the prompt that what you have done. You see this here. Again, here's the permissions that you can also click on here and delete data. You can permanently delete it, and it's disappeared. So this is the whole universe then opens for distributed file systems. It's on your user interface, what you can do it here from that side. So the next part, so that makes it, it is as simple as we used to this common directory structures, and that's also very good. So far, so good. Just questioning or quick feedback. Also, Raphael, it's good for you. The speed is good.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I don't see any questions coming in from the audience yet. I don't have any questions either. So let's just move on and.
Yeah. Okay. Go to the next point. That's exactly.
Take a look from the user side and from the developer side. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. That is already one part. The next part is then we go to the Hive. That is our SQL database engine. And you see, you can reach this very simple here by clicking this this button here, and it pops up. That is our Hive. Hive is a full database engine. It comes with full or a lot of capabilities. What you have, what you know probably from the database, relational database environment. It has also the query language, SQL in mind. You do all the same basically what you have done also before in.
So you kind of have, if you're familiar with SQL databases, you get a very similar experience to what you're already used in.
Yes, exactly. It's not only that what we see the experience from the functional side, so the syntax is the same, but we have also more the performance of such a relational database. What makes it really very useful for distributed data sets for massive and huge amounts of data. So it's not that big data is by definition spans about or should be really about hundreds of gigas and many data sets. That I think that is where this database plays very, very well, as it can handle then this massive amount of data. So query, we mentioned that already. Just selecting a database and can be, for example, this, and we have here. So I will go further. Just quick go through here the different. I can store jobs. I can look into the tables. I give you a quick example here. In this, we having load inside of the Sandbox. There's a database footmart, and there are lots of tables included, and just quickly browse through it. And you see, this is all the part of the database, and you see all the data definition language, storage information, detailed information, and also the statistics, how many rows, if I would run and statistics, also the number of rows, and so on and so on, and the columns. So very detailed information about the table, what you have, and you can also store different data here and define. Also, UDFs are important role for user-defined functions, and you can define your own functions on top of this database. Settings here, and for example, we can add some more settings. I have put here the test. That's our execution engine on top of Hive, so you will see also then the results in tests. But going back here to this, so make it now here. The first step is that we want to create from the just loaded tables and database. or a table. And I think the easiest part is I can upload it, or no, I will go to the database and create a new table. And we have already loaded the table, and so we can look here where it is, and we can enter here also our, I think I already saved it here. Yeah, then let me figure it out here. So you put the data part in it, and you should then get access to the data. Oops, 1 second. Default upload. 1 second. You need the permissions. Upload HDFS. Boom, 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 boom. I think that's also important to set into HDFS. Data, Maria. Oops. And now it comes to check it, just check it. I think it was trucks. .csv.
Let me just ask the audience, do you guys watching us live, do you have any questions? Is there anything you're particularly interested in? You can use the chat panel at the right-hand side and just ask questions. As we said in the beginning, we are going to answer the questions along the way as we go. So just let us know if there's anything.
Yeah. Okay, so after now I've defined this file which sits inside of the HDFS. I just uploaded that. So, and then you can click the preview button, and what you see is the two parts of that. One of them is a table preview, so that gives you all the data and the columns, what sits inside of the data set you just uploading and creating a table of. And this example here for truck ID, a model, what is it kind of one, and then you have in different mileages from different months. And you see also here one column later, it shows you then all the different data columns and together with the data types, and you can modify it as you want it. So we
maybe you can share a few words on the use case that we're gonna be working with in this sandbox environment. Because for me personally, that's always helpful if I kind of have an idea of what is the data that we're working with and what I'm supposed to do with that data. Can you maybe shed some light on that?
Yeah, so it's around the use case of showing truck data and the locations of trucks. So how much, how many mileages they have done, and it also then allows you to analyze this data. So it's a very bespoke, easy set of data, what you find also in the tutorials, very good explained. That's it's around this tracking experience. We're expanding this in the tutorials as we're going further. Also, that we combine this with data flow components and with Spark components that allows you to ingest real-time information from IoT devices and make them also real-time predictions. But this is really going in the next sessions or in the tutorial, it continues on that in this track. So everything is around trucks and mileages and so. That's it. So just loaded here the first tables. You say trucks, and now I can see here the table trucks loaded here inside. You see this is now part of my database. You see how simple it was, and we can simply make a quick check, select star trucks, 10 for example, and then we kick it off. So go down, and you see here now in my query screen, you see the results of the first 10 rows of exactly the data what we just have uploaded and seen that. And what is also here interesting is to go here to this to the test UI, what we show later. That's good. So I want to create another table to have the example here also. That's now uploaded table again. It's not trucks. It's this next table is geolocations. Geolocations. CSV. Preview. Okay, you see how fast this goes. Here's you see again the geolocations of the truck and where it was, the latitude, longitude, and the city where it belongs to. And again, the different types and so on. So now we loading from the behind the scene happens that from the HDFS system, it now pulls down to the database. So it's transferred and created a new format, which is optimized for query. It includes also Bloom filter and kind of indexing that allows you to directly and fast access the data. You see now all the procedures what goes behind this. So now we're having these two different tables, trucks and geolocations, and from that we can just quickly kick up some queries, for example, trucks or geo. Go and execute. You see that that's also very fast as it goes here. You can have also other commands here, for example, show table. And then it shows all the different tables that are the common database sets, SSC here, the geolocations and the trucks. So it's not only the SQL, but also here gives you the idea of also very handy is if you type the first two commands or something, then you can do a select command, or for example SE. It gives you the amount or different selection clause, and then it goes there. So that's how you really can execute and query tables of a data lake just on a very useful way here for this. It gives you here also some good idea how to work with this relational data. It allows you to explore all the data and so on SQL basis. And it's not limited to any data volumes, as we can go through over the whole set of the different sets. So just want to go back here now a little bit to the Bari side of that and give you a quick overview about Hive. And Hive is this makes a little bit bigger here. Has the views as we just saw it, but it comes also with a very interesting debugging or a query engine that allows you to show what goes on behind the scene. This is very interesting if you have long-running queries, so you can really check where is my query today running and what is the current status of the query, for example. Here we see this different commands. You can have also the detailed information, how much time is consumed by which task. So here, for example, we had some timing for the compilation and the parsing of that, and then the execution was much longer. And then it was also a couple of seconds then to execute that. So it gives you really detailed information, what goes behind your query, and you can look and optimize this in many ways. as it allows you also to have different configurations testing for your query optimization. So we can go further. I think here today it's we flip back now to the Hive view. So this is now that was the combination of the configuration of the different of the database engine and so on. So from that point, just yeah, some questions here.
Well, one question actually, from your experience, Friedel, how much time would it take for someone who's just getting started with the Hortonworks Data Platform? How much time would it take that person to set up the environment? What is your experience with that?
So the pure setup of the sandbox is just in a couple of hours. I think that's very easy and very handy. In particular, if you can spin up a virtual machine in the cloud, and that gives you directly the good experience. From that, go through the tutorials, and I refer here, as I mentioned before, we have the full set of the tutorials in the Hello World. It takes you, I would say, between 15-20 hours. So you should really spend decent timing to get used to the environment and the different tools. As I said, it's a full set of different services what you can explore, and it's really powerful services as Spark, as Hive, so and tests that are really good, giving good value for your job. That's and it takes some time to get used to it, and it's also very much to mention that you are not alone here. For you can also go to the Hortonworks community and ask questions about your experience, where you stick. And from the Hortonworks community, they help you. That's a community of 4,000 different people, with helping each other in the community work to find ideas for new products, for new services, and also helping with problems. And even sometimes a simple problem with a sandbox will be solved then in this kind of community life. So very convenient here usually to go here. And so the adoption from the sandbox to the real world cluster is seamless. So there's no difference if you have a sandbox environment as I have here with just one machine, or if you access it with hundreds of different nodes. It's the same user experience for you. So I think we have done already most of the parts. What is interesting here is also that we're having other tools also inside of the stack going here from that. You can see here the difference. I just flip up here to the Zeppelin notebooks. So from that point, oops, it's already where you can go to Zeppelin. You can kickstart it. And after you have logged on, you can also go through this different, more graphical user interface as a notebook, more used to data scientist work, also accessing the data what we just have created. And in this case, I've created or used another tool, another database from this from the sandbox, and it's also for you here, for example, to go here and query this. And I just want to show you a couple of nice features which are inside of the notebook, what can help you here to do quite a good job here on getting query data and have some data visualization inside of that. That's really also very helpful for jobs, but it can help do also simple jobs, as for example, select star from trucks. I think it's default. Let's do this. Oops. Oh, hang on.
That's always the issue with writing code live. Personally, when I'm doing webinars, I always try to avoid that. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate
I
people
have my
doing
scripting here, all, but this is
yeah,
now.
that's
I really want to show this. Yeah. How easy it is to have also just and now we see the data what we have inserted in the Hadoop cluster from the HDFS is also then available directly here in the Zeppelin notebooks for your analytics. So very convenient as you can use all the different kinds of analytic of graphs and so inside of this. Okay.
So that gives you sort of an experience that is very similar to if you're used to working with Jupyter notebooks. It's kind of a very similar concept, right?
Definitely. It is exactly as you said. It's a kind of notebook. Data science love to work in these environments, have feature-rich interpreters, and that is also here what we see more and more coming, that the world is mixing up the different SQL and Spark, and then we see also lots of Kafka data coming also into the equation, and that is definitely getting more powerful tools handling different data sources and handling not only the data sources, but it's the complexity of the cluster technology of the Hadoop cluster is completely shielded from the user side. So it's really, if we go back to the SQL experience and then give the data to the data science to do the job.
Can you shed some light on, yeah? Can you shed some light on the limitations of Zeppelin notebooks in terms of query sizes? What are the limitations here?
Yeah, we see today some limitation. You can expand it, but basically after execution, the full data set is loaded inside of the Jupyter server and then into the site. So I usually work with 1,000 rows. So that gives I would think it's a good mix between the amount of data what is transferred from the client or from the Jupyter or Zeppelin to the client side. It's not really only saturating the network. It gives you a good feeling about that. So that's quite a common limitation. What we can use. If I go here, I think it truncates even after 1,000 rows. Just having here a quick run. I think yes, 1,000 rows. You can set it on different count size as you see it here, but you have to limit yourself more to get some feedback, not waiting to the end of the universe until something happens. So that's more or the basic functions I've shown here in the presentation. So loading data into the Hadoop cluster, going into the Hive database technology, creating tables, making look and feel like a relational database to you. You can do all the SQL work, joining the different tables together, and you have also the different front ends here. And this time I showed you the Zeppelin Notebook that allows you to select the data by SQL and then processing that and visualize it in this environment. So that's I think for the first step good. Just want to go back and show again some of the different areas where we started to make it more easy to start. So from the sandbox, you see go to the tutorials, and from that you go step by step and see how this comes one piece to another. It has all the resources inside of the tutorials. It gives you also all the downloads of the locations of the demo data. It has already a full set of different data sets loaded, and it goes by far in further areas what is also doing Spark and machine learning also. So very comprehensive set of different tasks what you can do is explored in here inside of our tutorials.
Super. One question that is coming to my mind for you is, so let's pretend that you just go ahead and you explore the very basics of HDP. And once you're done with that, what's next? What other options do you have to learn more about HDP and HDF?
So definitely, this is the universe of data at rest. So we're having this kind of sandbox experience also for data flow. And the data flow it's really how we make the data transport, but also streaming analytics. So these are the two topics which are also very very common in our environments. And talking with customers, this is always important. It's not only that the data and the data lake itself is now the center of the gravity. It's also that the data what flows inside of the data lake is important. And that's the next step, which usually, if you explore the different data services functions, then you go to how to onboard the different data sources, which is going through data flow. And from that, we usually go into the next level, that is then streaming analytics. Streaming analytics makes more sense in the context of while onboarding or while the data is in flight, we already capture analytics and provide some meaningful feedback probably to a customer. So this is a different scenario there. In particular with streaming analytics, the use cases are getting more closer to the end user communication. And yeah, from that, it's basically not limited. There is, if you have pulled the data inside of the data lake, you can use also data flow components to distribute it. We see many times the Kafka is the de facto standard in messaging. So we pull out the data from in Kafka queue and we analyze it and store it back into the Kafka queue. So that is the hot topics what we see on the data management side. And then the next part is also data analytics, where we go into the deep learning and machine learning parts. And today I have specific topics in the SQL-based machine learning. So what we do is also to have machine learning on Hive database, on Hive data technology with SQL, and we just do it inside of the distributed database that we create the models for huge data sets inside of a Hive system, and we can run predictions based on this huge data sets very, very fast. So this is the natural learning curve, what you follow, starting with a sandbox on the data at rest, exploring the onboarding of the data, going then into the streaming analytics, and from that you go into the machine learning universe.
Well, great. That looks like there's a lot to explore in the sandbox, and there's you can spend a lot of time learning about using Hortonworks Data Platform, right? And Hortonworks Data Flow.
Definitely, from that all the ideas coming to your mind, as I said, it's the streaming and lots of different use cases then pops up. I see a couple of customers evaluating their ideas with the sandbox. There is nothing what I could recommend for go production, but it's for exploring what can I do with Hadoop, what can I do with data flow, and how could roughly a streaming analytics look like. That's a good entry point, definitely.
Super. So it looks like we're done with the intro. Is there anything left that you would like to share with us, Friedel?
So far, I think I mentioned the most important parts, and happy to have you in the follow-up sessions then. Thank you.
Super, super. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for those of you who were live with us. And please leave a comment in the comment sections in case you have any questions. And like Friedel mentioned, if there is interest in a further session on this subject, just let us know, and we might follow up with a second edition. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Have a great day. Have a great evening, depending on your location. And see you soon.
Have a nice day. Goodbye. It was a pleasure.